The subject today is on how to balance the mind. How to balance the qualities and the states of mind so as not to allow the mind to become monotone, dull, or to become too agitated. There's one sutta that talks about this, in which a group of monks go to visit some other ascetics in a park close by where they are staying. The other ascetics say to them, "Oh, we've heard that you practice the 7 factors of enlightenment and that you remove the 5 hindrances, 5 enemies. And us too, we practice 7 factors of enlightenment and we remove 5 enemies, so what's the difference?" Then afterwards the monks go to see the Buddha, and the Buddha says to them, "Well, monks, you should have asked these other ascetics whether all the 7 factors of enlightenment are good to practice at the same time, or if there are times at which there are some factors of enlightenment that are not good to practice." And he says this, it's sure they would not have been able to answer. And so then he gives the example that, okay, suppose that you have a fire that is burning low. Is it a good thing to add sand on top of it or to pour water on it? No, because that's going to put it out. If you want to bring your fire up higher, you have to blow on it, give it extra sticks. And in the same way, if the mind is becoming dull, sleepy, then it's not a good time to work on the enlightenment factor of calm, for example, because the mind is not agitated and it needs to be woken up. It needs something to enliven it, to awaken it. So that's a good time to work on joy as a factor of enlightenment or analytical mind. So the teaching is on how to keep the mind balanced. In the same way, if it's becoming too agitated, then it's not a good idea to work on more analytical mind, bring more joy, because it will become more agitated. Now is a good time to work on calm, focus on concentration, because again, that will bring the mind back to a good balance of not too tight, not too loose, not too agitated, not too slow. And this general principle of being able to keep the mind balanced is really a big part of the art of meditation, and it's very important to learn how to do. And it's something that we have to observe by ourselves. We can't just take a kind of rule, okay, when it's like this, I do that, when it's like that, I do this. We have to observe how it works and learn to find solutions. One example of how we can do that is Ajahn, when he was in a temple in Montreal, he had learned walking meditation, and so he would do walking meditation from one wall of his room to the other. And in meditation, one of the most tricky things is that the mind will go into what we call moha, being in the cloud. So it will you'll stop being aware, stop being attentive to watching the mind, and now the mind is just rolling automatically in a subject. And the thing is that when the mind is in moha, what moha actually means is not knowing the mind. So moha doesn't know he's in moha. How do you come out of it? How do you realize? Because, for example, if we are angry or if we are afraid or something, we know we're angry, we know we're afraid. But when we're just lost in the cloud in a daze or in a daydream, we don't know. And it's only when something happens to wake us up that we come out of it. So what Ajahn did was he found the trick of using the wall as something to wake him up. Every time he came to the wall, he would start to knock on the wall, or he would just say out loud, for example, "Hey, present?" Sometimes he would even hit his head on the wall. Anything to force the mind to come back, to look inside. So it means that the mind might wander off for a little while, but at every wall it has something to bring it back, so it can't go far. Another example of balancing the qualities of the mind, this is again particularly applicable to when in meditation, but it can be applied throughout the day as well, because sometimes the mind, especially in meditation, it's just on one subject and it kind of becomes dull and monotone or bored, or perhaps you think you're watching and you think you're present, but really it's not really awake, it's not really present, not really there. So now is the time to balance this with something to wake it up. It can be sometimes just as simple as going outside or taking a short break, but often it can be good to actually give something more, like to change the subject a little bit. So let's say we were meditating on just watching the intention of moving each foot, but now the mind has become kind of bored and dull with this. So then we can change it. We can say, okay, I can switch from this and instead watch the mind at the 6 sense doors trying to catch at the place of contact. meaning trying to be aware of the moment when any sound, any sensation, the moment when this meets the mind. We might pick one, let's say just sound. Any sound, try to see how the sound meets the mind. Or sometimes, again, if the mind is becoming sort of dull and bored, it can be very good to use a question, work on a question in meditation. For example, it can be as simple as, what is my aim in the life? Obviously not needed if our aim is already clear, but if not, it can be a good question to work on. Or another example, do I know I will die? And if not, why not? Or a question that Ajahn was using a lot before was, what makes the bird fly against the wind? What makes the fish swim against the stream? So now I don't want to go into talking more about these particular questions. It's just to give examples of how we can give the mind something to work on, which often makes it more happy, more light, and now he has something, he has food, if you like. You feed the mind with a subject in Dhamma to change the subject a little bit, and then he's very happy later on to go back to just pure meditation if that's what we want to do, just focusing on the mind or just focusing on one aspect of the mind, like the intention of body movement or how feelings are born or just the breath. Finally, I just want to make the point that, as I said before, it's not a hard and fast rule that we have to do this or we have to do that at this time or at that time. It really has to be based on your own observation of how your own mind works, because the mind of everybody is not the same. We all have different tendencies. Our mind has a different habit, a different way of being, different character. In some people, the mind might want to be lazy all the time, so now you have to constantly work on pushing it, putting effort, using a carrot, using a stick to encourage the mind to put more effort, to work harder. Some people, it's the opposite. Some people tend to be too tense, too strict, too stressed, too much, I have to do it perfectly. And then these people, oh no, you need to be, okay, take it easy, take a break, take a nap if you're tired. It depends on your character. Whatever is your habit, change it. Again, some people's character is to like to play, like to be joyful, like to laugh, like to have fun. So if the mind wants to be too much in wanting to have fun and laughing all the time in this way, now you want to balance it by bringing more elements of seriousness. It can be meditation on death, can be asking oneself what is the use of life or what is the point of life. The aim is generally just using more of the stick instead of the carrot, balancing the desire to just enjoy and have fun with, hey, do you remember you will die? Hey, do you know why you're so busy wanting to entertain yourself all the time? Like bringing back more seriousness. On the other hand, some people tend to be more of a nature to kind of harsh, guilty with themselves. More easily the mind wants to go in depression and anxiety and negative emotions. So in this case, it's important not to go too heavy on the I will die, I will lose everything, everything I do is pointless, and so on. Don't go too heavy on that. Instead, it's to bring joy, bring gratitude, to remind oneself that I am heir to my actions, born of my actions, and whatever I do now, that I will inherit. So when I do good now, I will inherit good in the future. Practice generosity to others and compassion to others and oneself, forgiving others and oneself. It's this kind of thing that is more helpful for the mind that tends to be too heavy and too harsh. So these are all many different examples, but again, it's always just up to the individual, whatever is needed at that moment. And the aim is not to allow the state of mind to be too much in one direction or another, too heavy or too light, either too loose or too tight. It has to be in the middle. And this is a constant effort too. It's a constant work that we have to perfect and we have to refine constantly, because it's much easier to go to one extreme or another than to be balanced. Balance is about the most difficult thing to achieve.